Good afternoon, Redbirds. I'm Chris Harding, Executive Director of Alumni Engagement at Illinois State University. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar as we get to learn more about Illinois State's 19th President, President Dr. Larry Dietz. If you have any questions that will help you get to know Dr. Dietz, please submit them in the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. We'll answer as many questions as we can over the next 60 minutes. If we do not get to your question live, we will do our best to follow up with you via email. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome President Larry Dietz.
Well, Chris, thank you very much for inviting me today. I'm humbled about the invitation, and for those of you who are being a part of this today, really appreciate your chiming in here. I'm humbled that you would want to know more about me. The only issue about me is that as you learn about me, hopefully you'll learn more about the university. I would love nothing more today than being in a room with all of you, sharing hugs and handshakes, and that's kind of my style of doing business. But at least for the time being, this is our new normal, and I think we're all becoming a bit more adept at technology. But any great day is a great day to be a Redbird, so I'm really glad to join you.
And we are so glad to have you today. We wanted to start with two questions we've gotten from several alumni before getting to know more about you, President Dietz. First, I think it's safe to say that we are living through a moment that will remain in the history books. Can you talk through a little of where campus is at in working through the coronavirus situation and how it feels to be a university president during this time?
Well, there are a lot of people throughout history credited with the quotation that I think a lot of us may recognize, and that quotation is, may you live in interesting times. And I think that they were all talking about the last 3 months for perhaps our world, our nation, our state, and even right here at Illinois State University. From the early part of March, when it became nationally apparent that the coronavirus would reach pandemic proportions, we had teams of Illinois State employees who have worked constantly in an environment sometimes changed by the hour at the beginning. We started in mid-March, initially with postponing and then canceling events, moving most students from on-campus housing, and that was about 6,000 of those individuals, changing classes to alternative formats, a big appreciation to the faculty for doing that in a very short order, and to the students for their persistence and also moving to that alternative format, holding commencements online and much, much more. Later, our emergency responder leaders developed 15 teams to help navigate the myriad variables that impact the university in such a crisis. You'll remember Governor Pritzker began with a shelter-in-place order that turned into a stay-at-home order, and we had to translate what that meant for the university environment in terms of essential employees and for the several dozen students whom for many reasons could not go back to their permanent homes and needed to remain in university housing. Now, as Governor Pritzker's Restore Illinois moves through its phases, the ISU work teams have turned their attention to creating Redbird's Return, which is a progress report and a plan for what Illinois State's new normal will offer for the fall semester of 2020. Redbird's Return, a progress report, does envision the fall 2020 semester at the university as a resident campus with students attending classes in a variety of formats, including some face-to-face, some hybrid, and some online instruction. Students will live in residence halls in smaller numbers, but nevertheless, we plan to have students living in residence halls and eat food prepared by our dining centers. Other students will obviously live in off-campus housing. Our Student Fitness Center will be open. Our Bone Student Center and our library, and of course, our quad will all be open and we'll all enjoy those offerings. We still are waiting on definitive word on what athletics will look like. Had a meeting last Friday with our Director of Athletics, Larry Lyons, with the Missouri Valley Conference. And we've gotten other information recently from the NC2A, but our goal is, to the extent possible, to offer the safest, cleanest, and finest residential campus experience available. Again, things, as we know, can change on a moment's notice, so we understand that the Redbird's return a progress report must be a fluid document, flexible enough to sustain rapid modification, and the constantly changing nature of COVID-19 response demands that our working teams remain nimble and ready to turn new information into further actions to keep our campus clean and safe while functioning at optimum levels. Still, we know there are aspects of managing COVID-19 that are more predictable and may involve providing the tools, technologies, personnel, and financial resources necessary to keep our faculty and staff members safe and healthy and maintaining high standards of cleanliness. Other aspects help demonstrate the university's continuing commitment to students who have been economically and socially impacted by the pandemic.
Thank you, Dr. Dietz. Illinois State recently released Educate, Connect, Elevate Illinois State, the university's strategic plan, which highlights the university's core values. Many of our alums want to know, how were our core values developed?
Well, I think anyone who's ever heard me speak know that I almost always use our core values as an impetus for my remarks. And when I participate in planning processes and ask other units of the university to plan, I ask that our core values be used as a foundation for all of that planning. Those values, as a matter of fact, encouraged me whenever I was an applicant for a position here to follow up on my application, because values are important to me. And so when the institution had values, that was an encouragement for what I thought was going to be a fit, and I think it has been, between me and the university. The idea of instilling core values goes all the way back to the year 2000 and our original strategic plan, at the time entitled Educating Illinois. Over the last 2 decades, the plan has been modified and the name changed to Educate, Connect, Elevate Illinois State University, but the core values are much the same as they were back in the original document. Individualized attention is the ideal that Illinois State provides a supportive environment that focuses on each student as an individual, and this is a foundational value of Illinois State. And when I talk to alumni about their experiences here, stories of individualized attention by a caring faculty or staff member is something that I constantly hear about. Another value of learning and scholarship is the ideal that Illinois State works with students as partners in their educational development, so they appreciate learning as an active and a lifelong process. Is also a part of the original document, and it really sums up the academic mission of the university. The newly modified and named report does add inclusion to the value of diversity, and also the value of respect and the value of collaboration. I don't think these values are more important than they have been in the past several weeks across the United States. Our value of respect is defined by fostering a culture characterized by mutual respect, a civil exchange of ideas, and a collaborative approach to problem solving. Faculty, staff, and students acknowledge others' rights to express differing opinions. They listen to opposing views conscientiously, and when disagreeing, they do so responsibly. Over the past few weeks across the country, I've really seen many examples of putting that value into practice, but we need much, much more of that. Following the death of George Floyd, I sent a message to all of our faculty, staff, and students and encouraged them to attend a mostly peaceful gathering in downtown Bloomington, where I gave remarks myself. This is something where I think that dialogue must continue throughout the year on this very important topic. And one final thought, Educate, Connect, Elevate is one of Illinois State's better examples of shared governance. This is a document that is written from input from the entire campus community and beyond. So many people can claim authorship credit for this strategic plan. And the last value that I want to underscore is the value of integrity in that plan. And I think that's very, very important to make sure that we're doing what we are saying that we're going to be doing. And so I think it's a great set of values and ones that can guide us well into the future.
Thank you, Dr. Dietz. Can you share with us what first made you interested in pursuing a career in higher education?
Well, I grew up on a dairy farm in the southern part of the state, and My mother was an elementary school teacher, and I had two aunts and two uncles who were also elementary and secondary teachers. I had one uncle who became the president of the Arizona Education Association, and I had another cousin of my mother's who was a professor at a university. And what they did in their roles to help change people's lives through education really intrigued me as a young boy, and then later as a young adult. And so that influence was really important to me as the role that education can play in changing our lives.
Terrific. What education does it take, or what classes do you feel were most beneficial as you prepared for this career?
Well, the role of president typically requires a terminal degree. My undergraduate degree was in pre-law and political science. My master's degree was in student personnel work, and my doctorate was in higher education administration. At each of those levels, the political science pre-law degree has really helped me early on understand the legislative process, the important role in that process in advancing to the bill stage, and then on through the various review stages, and then into potentially law. And so that was intriguing to me. It's not something that everybody follows that's a president, but that was a field that really I felt helped prepare me well from an undergraduate degree. Master's degree in student personnel was really about learning about the human development aspects of college students. Also taught me a great deal about organization and administration of universities, and about student services. And then the doctorate in higher education administration, there were quite a number of courses in that area that involved research and evaluation, also involved studying the finance of higher education. And I also took some additional courses in industrial engineering, and one might say, well, what does that have to do with higher education? And actually, those courses were beneficial in teaching me more about the power of working in groups and how to work in teams. And so I think that the education that I received at the institutions where I received that, all of that was very helpful. But there's also no substitute for experience, and so I've been fortunate to spend the bulk of my career in higher education administration, and it's been a very, very satisfying career, and one that I've enjoyed very much.
Thank you. Here's a question from one of our Redbirds. Outside of the classroom, what were you involved in when you attended high school and college?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I grew up on a dairy farm, and so around 4 o'clock in the morning, I knew what I was doing with the cows, and about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And so, and I commuted as an undergraduate student back and forth from the family farm to the university. And so I didn't really have a lot of time to do very much in high school or in college that was related to co-curricular kinds of activities. One I remember vividly in high school, I was always a pretty good keyboard person, and so our keyboard instructor recognized that and asked if I might want to be a sports editor for the high school yearbook, which was called The Dial, as I remember. And I said, well, I don't have time to work on this outside of class. And she said, well, you have generally been finishing your coursework in here well ahead of time. And so whenever you finish the tasks that you've been assigned in class, we can arrange for you to go upstairs and write for the Dial. And so that was probably my my foray into involvement in high school. In college, I was a member of the pre-law club. Frankly, not a very good member because of my duties on the farm. But I also, during that college time, and actually in high school, I was able to, at the time, participate as a pitcher for fast pitch softball, which was a popular thing at that time. among younger people. And so I enjoyed that and enjoyed the team aspects of that. Also was involved in 4-H as a young person, and a number of other activities but I would say compared to a lot of folks, I had limited time to pursue those, but I always enjoyed them whenever I was afforded the time.
So when did you realize, between the dairy farm and your lost club and being a fast pitcher, when did you realize that you wanted to be a university president? Did you just wake up one morning and say, I want to be president?
Well, no, it was not during any of those times, I can assure you. I've been asked that question in a number of scenarios, oftentimes with graduate students in a graduate seminar. And I'd say that what happens is that, as your career progresses, that you gain mentors along the way. And hopefully, if you don't feel like that you have those, you ask other people to be a mentor. You also have colleagues that become trusted friends and people that will give you honest feedback. And so I would say in the last part of my career, maybe the last decade or so of my career before I became a president, that a number of mentors and colleagues said, we think that you have, some of the qualities that would make a good university president. And so I thought about that a great deal, and I applied for a few of those. I came in pretty close a few times, and that also piqued my interest. But oftentimes I get asked the question about, well, what's the best way to prepare for that? And I said, well, for me, it's been a phenomenal career capper, if you will, as being a university president. But the best thing that, in my estimation, people can do to prepare for the next stage in their life is do the very best that they know how to do at the stage where they are right now. So regardless of your title within whatever organization, be the best that you can be at that. It doesn't hurt to let other people know that you have, other aspirations, so they can think about that. But to me, the best thing one can do to prepare for the future is do the best you can do with the present.
I couldn't agree with you more on the mentorship. I have many mentors over the years that I'm very thankful for. What's one of your favorite memories so far in your time at Illinois State University?
I've had a lot of favorite memories. I'm going to change one word in the question here, if you don't mind. I'm going to answer this. The first part of this is what is one of my most memorable and meaningful memories. And it happened out of a tragedy. In my first year at the university, there was a plane crash that many people remember that took the lives of 5 of our one assistant coach and another member of our athletic department, and then 5 members of the community. They were flying back into the area here after having attended a Final Four basketball game in Indianapolis. And that was a very, very sad and remains to be a sad memory for all of us. But we came together as a community in ways that I had not seen before, both in terms of the Redbird community on the campus, the Bloomington Normal community, and we supported those families, and many still do, through a time that was very difficult for those families and very difficult for the university. So that was very meaningful about how in crisis people can come together and support each other. And I was so proud of my Redbird colleagues and the community to do that. And then there are a lot of other firsts that are favorite memories. A first time to address the General Assembly before the appropriation committees. That was special. First time to make a presentation to the Academic Senate as president. That was special. First time to attend nearly it was a championship game, but nearly winning the championship with our football team in Frisco, Texas. That was a first time and special memory. But I also have favorite memories that happen every day on this campus of the faculty member who wins a national or international award. And it doesn't happen every day, but it happens a lot more frequently than people might think. The first time to preside over a university commencement and watch the faces of the students who are walking across the stage, and then I get to shake their hand after they come off the stage. So my life has been enriched dramatically by a lot of very meaningful and also favorite memories of the university, and I continue to be impressed with the passion for this university and for all the good people that are affiliated with it.
The Redbird community is certainly a very special place. It has been to me over the years as well. What do you feel is one of your proudest moments as Illinois State University's president?
I don't know that I have one. The litany of things that I just talked about certainly, would fit into all of those categories. And some of the things that people don't hear about, for example, accreditation. If an institution is not accredited, then you really don't have a very good product. And I remember the first time that I met with an accreditation team who had come in here, and I didn't know any of them prior to their arrival here. And I met with them at the end of their time here, and they had told me that they were going to write up the report, but they said that they had a couple of observations for me. They said, first of all, your academic programs are stellar, and we are going to recommend the highest level of accreditation that we have the possibility of recommending for the longest period of time that we can recommend. So, but all of us have talked, and they said, President Dietz, you have something really special going on here. I said, well, I think so as well, but do tell me what you think is special. And they said, there is a momentum, a pride, an esprit de corps, a morale that frankly doesn't exist at any of our institutions. And so however you're doing that is phenomenal, and keep it up. And I said, well, I wish I could say that I created all that myself, and I clearly haven't. It's a sense of responsibility and pride in work, not ego, but pride in the work that we all do, that I felt whenever I came here for the first time. And what I'm simply trying to do as president is to keep the momentum going. And I really feel like that this is a very special place. And when you have people from other campuses that really don't know you or your institution, other than by that kind of a visit, that's phenomenal pride in this institution, because it says positive things about our academic program, about all of our services that we provide, about our students, about our staff and our faculty, and to a degree about our alums. So I'm very proud of that.
Terrific. What do you believe are the most important skills to practice as a leader?
Well, it gets back to the values, Chris. For me, I believe in all those values. I try to live into those every day as a president of this university, and I try to educate other people about what the values are, and try to explain what they mean and why they're important. But I also think that in terms of just general skills as a leader, integrity is huge, and so having integrity is important. Building a team. I've been fortunate to inherited some folks that report to me directly, and have hired other people that report to me directly, and then folks that report to them, and so forth. And there really is a team esprit de corps here. And building that team with people who are competent, who are confident, who are good communicators, who want to work as a part of a team and make the entire organization better, regardless of the specific role that they play, that's very, very important. Communicating is very important. Being visible, I think, is also very important. And but also having honesty and integrity and being genuine to individuals. I think that comes across if you are that way, and it comes across if you aren't that way. And so those are some just kind of broad-based skills that I think are important.
I wholeheartedly agree. I inherited some amazing teams over the years. What are you looking forward to most in terms of what's to come for Illinois State's future? What excites you the most?
Well, I would have answered this question differently in January. I will say that, what's to come for Illinois State this fall is obviously we need a good, healthy and safe return. I think we'll look back at this pandemic, and hopefully we'll say that was a blip on the screen, albeit an important and for many folks who've lost loved ones, a very sad blip on the screen. But I'm looking forward to starting the fall and with the pandemic, trying to cope with that. I think there's also a very important role for the university to play and for me to play in working with students, particularly our underrepresented students and our Black and brown students in particular, and making sure that their concerns are not only heard, but that we have action plans in place after we've agreed upon particular courses of action. The diversity and inclusion value is something that we have taken seriously, and over the course, I'd say, of the last few years have made some progress, but clearly a lot more needs to be done. I've hired an assistant to the president for diversity and inclusion, and she's a respected faculty member here on the campus, and she's going to help us with that agenda. So I think that's something we also we'll be looking forward to. In terms of academic programming kinds of things, we are still investigating an engineering program here. We're moving that ball down the road, even despite the a little bit of a delay that the pandemic has caused us. So we're looking forward to establishing an engineering program here on the campus. We also have an international initiative that we were well on our way to executing, and then the pandemic hit, and a lot of international students just simply can't get visas, and so that's going to be delayed a bit for 2021. But again, I think as we get over the pandemic, that's going to be another initiative that we're really excited about. And then, well, gosh, the list goes on, but there's lots of things that I think that will come forward this fall, and including the election. And a lot of students are very interested in learning how to vote. Many will not have voted for the first time, and so I think we're doing voter registration activities in the fall. And so universities are always filled with excitement and filled with lots of energy. So I look forward to every fall and being a part of that.
I'm looking forward to this fall as well. I have an incoming freshman, so.
Oh, very good. Great.
Yes. Here's a great question. Can you share the story on how you met First Lady Marlene?
Well, there are two versions of that. There's her version and my version, and frankly, my version is probably not terribly flattering to me. We actually met in Kansas City, where she's from, and I was a vice chancellor at the University of Missouri, Kansas City there. But we met through a program called the Centurion Program that was really a program about civic engagement in the community of Kansas City. And we were both involved with that. I had completed, it's basically a 3-year program, and or 2-year program, sorry. And I had completed that program several years ahead of Marlene, and ended up going back to a alum and active member reception. And I remember meeting Marlene for the first time at that reception. The sad part for me is that she has absolutely no recollection of that meeting. So that doesn't reflect terribly well on me, but she does remember that, and her version is that we really met on a committee that was called the Friends of the Fountains Committee in Kansas City. It's the City of Fountains, and she and I served on that committee, and I was chairing the committee at the time. And that's where she thinks that we met for the first time. And I probably should go with her version of the story, but back to the integrity piece. So even if it doesn't reflect well on you, I felt compelled to tell you my version too. So.
That's a great story. What do you both enjoy doing when you're not attending or hosting Illinois State University functions?
Well, we're family folks. My family's from the southern part of the state, and her family's from Kansas City, and all of our kids and grandkids live in Kansas City, and so we visit family quite a bit. We host a family here as often as they can make the trek. So that's the first part. We also enjoy traveling, and so we do quite a bit of that for the university, but we also have a penchant to want to see as much of this country and this world as we can. That's been difficult with the pandemic, but eventually the United States will open up, and eventually the world will open up, and so we hope to get back to that. But I'd say family and travel are high priorities, and visiting friends in the process as well. We both have lived around the different parts of the country, and we have friends in those locations, and so we do a good deal of visiting with friends as well.
Okay, we've got a few questions coming in from our audience this afternoon. So I'm going to start with this one. How can alumni best support the university, especially in your role as president?
Well, we are going to be wrapping up a comprehensive campaign at the end of the month, and I'm not going to tell you the final amount because we're not there. We've still got a couple of weeks, and we're still raising money, but it's going to be a pleasantly surprising amount over the goal that we had whenever we entered it. So many alums have given to that campaign, and we very, very much appreciate that. So clearly, that's a way that alums can support the university and the entire university, whether it's academic departments or service areas or scholarships or whatever the area happens to be. The other thing that you can do that is very important is that you can tell your neighbors, you can tell your family members who might have a college age-going student that Illinois State's a darn good place to send your son or daughter or niece or nephew or grandson or granddaughter. Matter of fact, my wife and I have her oldest granddaughter goes here, and she's from Kansas City, but she'll be a junior coming in this fall. And so clearly we tell our own family this, but you can be an advocate for the university in terms of enrollment. That's a big deal for us. You can also be an advocate for higher education generally and for Illinois State specifically with legislators and telling them how important it is that they fund higher education and specifically Illinois State. We get the lowest amount per student in the entire collection of colleges and university from the state. And that's an old formula that was developed many years ago, and it really has never been updated despite my banging on that on a pretty regular basis. But I will say, though, that the legislator's also been generous, and the governor signed a bill that for this next year is keeping our budget flat, and that's very much appreciated. But you can be a voice for us with your own legislator, people representing you in your area, by telling them about the important story of Illinois State. And then you can also start alumni groups. If you don't have an alumni group around your area, start one up. That's really terrific, and it's a lot of fun. And if you have one in your area, please attend. Those, again, are a lot of fun. But I would say get involved. There's lots of ways to be involved as an alum. And we talk about the importance of fundraising oftentimes before we even talk about fundraising. So usually it's your friends that broadly defined that then can be influenced to give money. And some, frankly, don't need to be influenced at all. Their experience is the main thing that influenced them. So there's lots of ways to be involved, but I'd say the key is get involved. We would appreciate that involvement, and I think you'll be enriching for the process through the process as well.
I couldn't have answered that question better myself. You even touched on the getting involved in networks. So nice work.
Good.
You also covered kind of 3-in-1 question. We had a budget question, and so you did respond to that appropriately too. So you're doing great.
Thanks.
Here's a great question. As a leader, what advice do you have on how to get involved in your community?
Well, first of all, there are a ton of communities that have a ton of needs. And so I think first thing you can do is to look at the number of not-for-profits that are in your area, the number of service organizations that are in your area. Again, back to the alumni group, oftentimes things will be spawned out of alumni groups, but all communities have phenomenal needs. And one of the things that we talk about our students was one of the other values is about civic engagement that we didn't really cover much before. We want our students who are graduating from here not only to be experts in their field of study, but we also want them to be responsible citizens in their communities. And that means getting involved and serving on a board or serving on a commission or volunteering in, with a not-for-profit or being a part of a service organization and essentially doing something that's beyond the academic preparation that you've received here. The communities need that, and we want our graduates to be leaders in those communities. So many have gone through formalized leadership training here. Many of them, of our graduates, have been a part of our over 400 different student organizations where they've made contributions and perhaps developed or honed their own leadership skills. And the communities in which we all live and work need us. And so I don't think there's any time more than this time right now where that is true. And so I really encourage people just to look around and give it a try. Just say, I'll try this, and if it doesn't, if there's not a fit there, there's a zillion other places that could be a fit. So just I would encourage folks to kind of identify some time, step out of our comfort zones, and get to work.
Terrific. Here's a good one. What is your favorite ISU tradition?
Well, there's nothing like homecoming. That's really terrific. I'm not going to have just one. Commencement is phenomenal. I look forward to commencement each year. Unfortunately, we had to do it virtually this year, and I delivered the commencement address, I think behind this very podium, but it was in the living room at the university residence. And so, but that's really phenomenal. Family weekend is fantastic with families coming back and visiting folks. For the students, the Fall Fest that generally is held out on the quad that has all the different student organizations and many businesses in the community. That's very special. The Missouri Valley tournaments are very special sporting events, and the list just goes on and on. So I'm really a fan of all of that, and so it's hard to pick out one or two, but some of those kind of stand out in my mind.
Those are great ones. Here's one from our friends in the villages. Do you have any travel plans set for 2021?
Well, yeah, we had a lot of them set. Unfortunately, we've had to postpone a number. We've always enjoyed the opportunity to visit with our friends in the villages whenever we've been down that way, and we typically make a Florida swing about every year. We don't unfortunately get to the villages every year, but we try to get there about every other year, and so we're I think due in the villages, if you will. I hope that the pandemic gets on out of here so we can have another time to come down, perhaps this winter to say hello to all the alums and friends that are in the villages. So kind regards to all of you, and enjoy that nice weather down there.
We do love our Florida swing down there. What is your favorite part of the university residence?
Well, Marlene and I spend the bulk of our time in a little den that's just off of the hallway that kind of leads out into the main entertainment area. And that's where we really spend the bulk of the time. And there are really occasions where it's just the two of us there. So usually folks that come out, there's they see large numbers of other people there, and we always enjoy that as well. Matter of fact, we've really missed not having people to the house, through the spring and into the summer. We're not sure how it's going to work, for this fall yet, but we anticipate doing what we can to re-engage in those kind of settings out of the house. But that little den area is kind of a cozy place that we watch some movies now and then. We watch the news and do some reading and spend some individual time with each other. The other part of that I really enjoy, and Marlene does as well, is the sun porch on the back of the house. The sunsets out there are unbelievable that we get to watch. And as an old farm kid, I get to look at that over a corn or bean field most of the time, and it kind of reminds me of home. So we really enjoy it there.
I was hoping you were going to mention the porch and the overlooking the golf course. It's quite beautiful. That was our last question from the audience. So as we wrap up our time together, and I've taken some time to get to know you, another question came up several times. What is one interesting fact that people may not know about you?
Probably folks don't know that I have a fear of heights. I'm acrophobic, and I'm not sure how people would know that about me. I have tried to overcome that, and I've read a self-help book once, something about face your fear and keep on going, or something like that. And I did that prior to meeting my wife whenever she had her own business, and she was out in California, and I was flying out for the weekend. And it was her birthday weekend, and she was doing her business with this organization that she was involved with, and the conference room was near a vineyard, and they had a hot air balloon opportunity there. And Marlene loves that kind of stuff, and I kept thinking to myself, maybe this would be a great birthday present, and it really was. So I bought that, and I thought, after all, I've read the book, and boy, I'll be ready for this. And the views for her, it really made her happy. It scared the heck out of me, and so I don't think. One other thing I've done to try to address that is I also have done parasailing, and while they are beautiful, and I know a lot of people enjoy both of those two events for me were an hour apiece, and those were the two longest hours probably of my life. So that's probably what people wouldn't know about me. So if you're going to invite me someplace, I'd love to come. If you're going to offer a hot air balloon experience or parasailing, I might decline. So anyway.
Kudos to you for getting a hot air balloon. I don't think I could get my husband in a hot air balloon. He is also afraid of heights. And with that, our time comes to a close. Dr. Dietz, are there any last minute words that you'd like to add?
Well, just a simple thank you. Thanks for including me in this and for your support. Thanks for all you do for Illinois State University. We are richer because you have been here. And I just want to end with something that I generally end most of my remarks with, and that is thank you, and go you Redbirds. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Dr. Dietz. Thank you again to all of our attendees. Thank you to our University Marketing and Communications Group and our alumni engagement teams for making this webinar a complete success. If your question was not answered today, or if you have additional questions, please send them to alumni@illinoisstate.edu, and we'll work with Dr. Dietz to get them answered via email. You'll also be able to find a recording of this webinar at alumni.illinoisstate.edu/virtual. And don't forget, next week, we are featuring a webinar on self-care and mental well-being. More information can be found on the Alumni Association website. Have a great day, Redbirds. Bye-bye.